Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I heard that you guys have been having some questions. I got a couple emails over the weekend about last Friday's homework problems with the trig practice problems. I printed all of the slides from your homework assignment last week. I was going to start a new lesson today, but given how many questions you have and I saw how many of us didn't finish the assignment, I'm going to give you today's class time to finish this assignment. And then if it goes quickly because of this little lesson video, there's more Delta Math problems for you to work on. That's more practice, just like these problems. But because we've had so many questions, I figured we could go through a couple questions in the assignment. So we'll go through like 3 or 4 questions and hopefully that'll help you guys. Okay, with that, let's get started. Here is number 1. We learned in the lesson video from last week, Friday, the acronym SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA is an acronym that reminds you how to set up the 3 basic trig functions that all of trigonometry is based on. So references sine, which will be equal to that opposite side over the hypotenuse side. Ca references cosine, which will be equal to that adjacent side over the hypotenuse. And then toa would be tangent, which will be equal to that opposite over the adjacent side. Okay, so these little zeros or circles with the slashes through them are theta. Theta is an angle measurement that is our reference point for an angle specifically. So on this first problem, all the question is asking us to do is, given this picture with only the 90-degree angle measure and 3 side lengths, we want to get used to which trig function pairs with which of the ratios of sides, like opposite over hypotenuse pairs with sine, adjacent over hypotenuse pairs with cosine, and then opposite over adjacent pairs with tangent. So all this problem wanted you to do was from angle A, so we're going to put theta in angle A, they want us to find the sine, cosine, and tangent. And we knew to look from angle A because it said angle A right after sine, cosine, and tangent. So they want us to write the fraction in lowest terms and then divide it using our calculator rounding to 4 decimal places. So we'll start with sine, or so. So from angle A, the opposite side would be CB, or this 56. The hypotenuse will always be across from the 90-degree angles. And then, of course, the adjacent will always be touching or next to near the theta. The hypotenuse will always be adjacent to the angle. So we know that the hypotenuse trumps the adjacent, and so then the other adjacent side is what we call the adjacent. So for this first one, they want us to find the sine of angle A. So from angle A, we need the opposite number divided by the hypotenuse number, which will be 56 over 65. As a decimal in our calculator, that would be 0.8615, rounding to 4 decimal places. That's all they wanted. We can't simplify 56 over 65, so that's it. Okay, cosine of A is going to be the adjacent over the hypotenuse, or ca. So the adjacent is 33, the hypotenuse is still 65, and then as a decimal, that will be 0.5077. Then we need to move on to tangent. Tangent from angle A is going to be the opposite divided by the adjacent. That opposite side is 56, and that adjacent is 33. As a decimal in our calculator, it'll be 1.69696969, but as we round to 4 decimal places, it would be 6970. So that is all that they wanted for number 1. They just wanted the ratio as a fraction and then also the decimal using sine, cosine, and tangent. Okay, that was all I wanted for number 1. Then if we looked at number 2, in your slides, it's the exact same set of directions, but I forgot that I have a more updated version with better directions, so I accidentally attached the wrong slide directions on your Google Slides, so I'm going to show you what the directions should have said. The directions for number 2, 3, 4, and 5 should have said solve for the missing variable using one of the 3 trig functions and round to 4 decimal places. Round it to 4 decimal places always for all the problems in today's assignment or Friday's assignment. Okay, so when we have a problem where we have a missing side and now we have an angle measure with the triangle and one other side length given, using SOHCAHTOA or one of the trig functions, we need to first pick our reference point or pick our theta. For now, we're not going to pick theta to be the 90 degrees, and we'll explain in later foldables why. But when you pick theta, it has to be one of the two angles that is not the 90 degrees. Since this angle is already solved for me, I'm going to pick theta to be right there. After we pick theta, we need to assign what sides have been given to us. What sides do we have? Well, we know B is the hypotenuse, and we know since theta is 57, that 14 is going to be that opposite side from theta. Now we need to pick a trig function to start solving and setting up the problem. The three trig functions are sine, cosine, and tangent. Think SOHCAHTOA. We have the opposite and the hypotenuse, so that's going to go with SO or sine. So how we set it up is it's going to be sine of that angle measure, which is 57, is equal to the opposite, which is 14, divided by the hypotenuse, which is B, that variable. And now that we have it set up, we just go to regular algebraic solving. When you solve for a missing variable in an algebra equation with the variable in the denominator, we're going to have to get that variable out of the denominator by multiplying by that variable so that it can cancel on the right-hand side. Whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So let's bring down what we have from that. Now we have B times sine of 57 is equal to 14. We still want to get B alone, so we have to undo that multiplication with division. So we're going to have to divide by sine of 57. That's going to cancel. Now we are typing into our calculator 14 divided by the sine of 57. So I'll show you how to do it on your calculator. 14 divided by, here I'll bring it down, maybe you can see it better. 14 divided by, there's 3 buttons on your calculator. Sine, cosine, and tangent. We want sine, and our angle measure was 57. Make sure you always close your parentheses. Maybe if I bring it closer, you can see. 14 divided by sine of 57, that's going to be 16.6931. And there's my answer. Okay, so this directions for solving for the missing variable using one of the 3 trig functions, round to 4 decimals, will also be for number 3, 4, and 5. And then when we get to number 6, we have a slightly different set of directions. Number 6 says solve for the missing variables, plural, using the trig functions and round to 4 decimal places. So it's the same thing we did on number 2, but now we're going to have to solve for 2 variables, so we'll have to do those same sets of steps, but now just 2 more times. Okay, so same starting point. We need to pick a theta. I'm going to pick 51 because it was given to me. And then we need to pick a variable to solve for first. I'm just going to pick u, and that's going to tell me what sides we have. So u is the adjacent side. And then I'm going to use the 32 because t is not going to help me. I need a number involved. That's the hypotenuse, and then obviously t will be the opposite. But for right now, we're just using adjacent and hypotenuse. So if we go back to SOHCAHTOA, we're going to use cosine. So it's cosine of 51 is equal to that adjacent side, which is labeled u, over the hypotenuse, which is 32. Now we have our equation set up, and we just have to solve for u. So we have to undo that division by multiplying. So we're going to say u is equal to 32 times the cosine of 51. So that's what we're typing into our calculator. 32 times the cosine of 51. As a decimal, that will be 20.1383. Now we need to move on and solve for t. This time we're going to use the opposite side and the hypotenuse. So rather than using ka, we should probably use so for the opposite and hypotenuse. So that's going to be sine of 51 is equal to t over 32. And now we're going to multiply both sides by 32. Multiply by 32. This will cancel. We get t is equal to 32 times the sine of 51. So that's what we plug into our calculator, 32 times sine of 51. That will be 24. T is 24 round to 4 decimal places. That's 8687. There's our two answers for number 6. Okay. Okay. Then number 7 is the exact same thing. They give you an angle measure, a side length, and then solve for the two missing sides. So just like number 6. Number 8 is just like number 6. Number 9 is just like number 6. And then number 10 is where it gets a little different. So number 10, they don't have any variables for these missing sides, but they still want you to find them. So you have to assign your own variables. I mean, we typically like working with X and Y, but you can pick any variables you want, like T, U, W, S, R, all those things, okay? So you're gonna solve using sine, cosine, or tangent, just like we did on number 6. And then number 11 says the picture is the same as number 10, and you're gonna use your answers from number 10 to calculate the perimeter. So once you have these two missing sides, calculating the perimeter is just gonna be adding those three together to find your perimeter. And then number 12 is the exact same picture as well. And they're gonna say use the picture below in number 10 and use your answers for number 10 to calculate. Now we're calculating the area. The area of a triangle, in case you forgot, is 1/2 times base times height. So it would be this 49 times whatever you got for this height, and then all divided by 2. That's number 12. And then the last problem I'm going to do with you together is this number 13. Number 13 is technically a word problem, but they were nice enough to draw the picture for us. So it says that a chairlift on a ski slope has an angle of elevation, which is this angle from the ground going up, of 28 degrees. And that ski lift, or that chairlift, covers a total distance of 4,640 feet. To the nearest foot, we want to figure out what is that vertical height, like from the ground to the top, in feet covered by the chairlift. So we're just going back to using SOHCAHTOA like we did on number 2. So we are going to pick our angle. I'm going to pick 28 because that was the one given to us, so I picked my theta. I'm going to label the sides that we've been given. So this is the opposite side from theta. This is my hypotenuse because it's across from the 90. And now we have to pick which trig function goes with opposite and hypotenuse, and that's going to be SO again. So that's sine of our angle measure, which is 28, is equal to the opposite side divided by the hypotenuse, which is 4,640. So we're going to divide, or excuse me, it's currently getting divided. So we need to undo that with multiplication. So we're going to multiply by 4,640 on both sides. So H is going to be equal to 4,640 times the sine of 28. And then we're plugging that into our calculator. 4640 times the sine of 28. Close our parentheses. We get 2,178 point. It told us to round to the nearest foot. So if it's 0.35, we would probably say 2,178 feet. And that is the height of our ski lift, because it told us to round to the nearest foot. Those are all the problems from Friday. If you have any further questions, you can always email me. I will be available today via email because I'll be in class while you guys are in class. So if you have questions, email me and I'll try to answer them as soon as I possibly can. There's more practice problems on Delta Math, just like this. There will be problems like this one that we did, where they give you 3 sides and you have to just set up the fraction, and they'll tell you to set up the fraction given an angle. So they'll give you an angle to look from, like a letter, like sine of B or tangent of A or something like that. So you'll have some practice problems like this, and you'll have some practice problems like this where they give you an angle measure, a side length, and you have to solve for that missing side. But either way, the Delta Math is all on SOHCAHTOA. Okay, so those are your 2 tasks for today. Finish these questions and then work on the Delta Math. If you have any other questions, let me know via email.